Hi everyone, my name is Valentin and I am creator of ICMIZER. In this short video I'm going to show you which changes and new capabilities we have brought in our recent update to ICMIZER of version 2.10. In short, this update could be summarized as improved performance and enhanced support for MTT analysis before the final table. Let's quickly look at the changes. So people who only want to spend like 5 minutes on the video will learn everything they need to know. So about improved performance, we can look at the situation. We have 9 players at the table, and let's calculate the Nash equilibrium. Previously, if you remember, it was taking roughly 15 seconds. Now it should take around 6 seconds, which is about 2.5 increase in performance and speed. We have also increased the limits of the MTT ICM analysis control from 60 to 100 players remaining in the tournament. We have also added support for knockout tournaments in this MTT mode, so now you can review knockout tournaments in MTT mode and find Nash equilibrium ranges and perform calculations. Also, we have added support for FGS model of version of depth 1 for situations with 30 or less players. As you can see here, we can calculate Nash with FGS1 model. And also we have added support for calculation of Nash ranges in MTT mode with many players remaining when there are situations with raises or re-raises before us. As you can see, we can calculate the Nash ranges even in these type of situations, and this is the continue from our previous update of version 2.9, where we added support for these types of spots in final table calculations and SNG calculations. Now let's go over these new features, and I will explain them in more detail to those who want to learn more and to know how to use our tool to get the maximum out of it. Let's start with the increased limits and how that works. Let's choose a 100-man 9 max turbo MTT SNG tournament on PokerStars, and as you know, it has 27 payouts. Now we can review situations with up to 100 players remaining, and let's see how that works and how quickly we can find the Nash ranges. Previously the Nash ranges were only possible with like 20 players at the table. So this is a huge change, and now these buttons are almost always in sync, so you can use the standard approach to spot analysis, that is, enter the situation at the table, choose the right tournament or create one, then calculate Nash ranges, then manually adjust some ranges to apply your reads to your opponents, and then click the calculate button to find the optimal range for the player. And here we can see that we have very tight corners and we have a very wide pushing range. If we calculate Nash, let's see how it performs, because as we increase the number of players remaining at the tournament, like now we have 100, the performance decreases. It takes longer to calculate all the EVs for this many players, and we can see that it took around 10 seconds to calculate the Nash ranges with 100 players remaining. So let's look at how exactly we should be doing this in order not to miss anything. First of all, let's talk about this mode and what's the alternative. What were you doing before when we didn't have such feature? Many players who play MTTs simply perform calculations in the cheap EV mode. And what's so important about the cheap EV mode is that it's not really the best mode for MTT or any tournaments at all. In cheap EV mode, you're calculating the results in terms of chips and not in terms of payouts or money, and MTTs are about money. They are not always about finishing the first, they are often about outlasting your opponents. For example, at the extreme case of satellite tournament, when there are 21 players remaining and 20 payouts, like tickets to some other tournament, no one wants to bust. Everybody's playing extremely tight, and in some cases folding aces could be a reasonable approach, and this is why you need ICM. While normal tournaments do not feature such pressure, they always feature some kind of pressure, and this is true for almost all cases. except the earliest stage of MTT tournament. Now, if you're in the earliest stage of MTT tournaments, like when everyone has the initial stacks, the chip EV calculations actually are very close to the real situations. So I recommend to use chip EV calculations only in the earliest stages of a tournament. If some players have busted, the bubble factor increases from 1 to something like 1.2 at least, and that would mean that we are less interested in winning than in losing a chip or our stack. And it means that we need more ED to push or to call than the chip EV model would suggest. And the ICM mode, which we turn on by clicking this button with the in situations before the final table, takes the payout into account. And it can take into account pre-bubble situations, like for example, there are 40 payouts and 100 players remaining. This is one strategy. If there are 50 players remaining and there are 40 payouts, it's another strategy. If there are 41 players remaining, that's extremely different strategy, and chip EV doesn't know anything about it. Now let's talk about two important things and questions which often arise when you're reviewing multi-table situation when there are some players at our table. First of all, you need to choose the right tournament. And if you are analyzing a hand from some random tournament, for example, it had like 800 players and 80 payouts, you need to create a custom tournament. To do that, click here and choose the Create New Tournament. Here you get the Add New Tournament Structure window. First of all, name the tournament. Let's say you name it Custom 800 Tournament. Tourney. And we know the payouts. To enter the payouts, you need to open the tournament lobby. And while you're looking at it, enter the payouts. Usually the first 9 payouts are different, so let's enter them. Let's say they read like this. And what I'm about to show you is how to increase the speed or decrease the time which is required to create the tournament. So here we can use the zone feature. Usually there are different zones in MTT tournaments where each payout is the same. Say there is a zone from 10th to 18th place which get paid $15. We enter the payout and we could go like this, entering them one by one. But instead we are going to use the zone feature. We create the 10th payout and we choose the zone size 9. So the payouts from 10th to 18th place is $15. Then we can enter the next payout zone till, for example, 27 players is $11. And then we can create different payout zone, let's say until 45 players. And if I said initially that we have 80 players, let's say that the last zone pays out like 80 payouts. We can see that we have created, we are basically ready to create the tournament. We can click create and it will be created. Here we can see the total sum of payouts. One important thing to note is that if you are creating the knockout tournament, it is very important to enter the number of players, which is the number from the tournament, and the knockout size. Let's say it is like $2 in this case. If you are reviewing the progressive knockout tournament, we only offer support for the final table in progressive knockout tournaments, so you should check out this checkbox. But let's finish creation of standard tournament without any knockouts and see what happens. We click create and the tournament is created. We can see here that if we hover over it with the mouse, we can see the payout, still the 8th place. And it only has one blind level. To review some hands from here, you will have to create custom blinds levels like this. And it will be stored in the list of tournaments and you can find it at the end of MTT list. Here we can see that we have this tournament. Now let's see how many chips should be there. If we had 800 people and 1,500 starting stack, it should be 1,200,000 chips. So if we have 100 players remaining in this tournament, we would have a situation where the average stack is 12k. So our table should also feature 12k. So everyone should have a bigger stack, and we could do something like this to emulate such tournament situation. Let's say we have a bigger stack here and someone like this. And also for the spot to make sense, at this level it usually makes sense if everybody has such average stack like 12k. Usually blinds are bigger. For example, let's say they are 800 and 80. And let's say we're reviewing a spot. So we have something like near the bubble, but not nearly there yet. So let's see how the Nash equilibrium will look like. We calculated it, and let's see how long it takes. It should be around 10 seconds. And we will see how wide should the small blind who has us covered pushing in such tournament situation. And we will compare this result to situation with 81 players remaining and to a situation where there are 80 players remaining, which would mean that the bubble has burst and everybody is finally in the money. Now we can see that he can push extremely wide, like 100% of hands, and we can only call with 9% of hands. Now, remember that this is a custom tournament, so maybe your tournament would be not so strict. But if we can see that it's so strict at 100 players with 80 payouts, at 81, I can say that it should be even stricter. So we have 81 players remaining. Let's see the Nash ranges. And I believe it wouldn't be better for us. We should be even tighter, because now it's even more important to outlast this short stack, this guy who are shorter than our stack. And we can see that we can only call with 3%. So this is an important effect of a bubble. If bubble bursts and we have 80 players, let's see the Nash ranges, and you should see a huge change in strategy, because with our tournament, as we have created it, there is a big zone with the same payouts from 80 to 45 place. So let's have a look at the result, and you can see that everything changed. Bubble burst, and we can now call with 33% of hands, and because of this, because small blind knows that we are not so interested in folding, he should adjust his range too, and can only push 70% of hands. Now we can look at the more standard tournament, like 100, 180 man, 9 max MTT SNG tournament, and let's see how it bubble works with this MTT mode in ICMIZER. Now the sum should be 270,000, and the average stack should be 9k. So let's decrease our average stack slightly, remove some bigger stacks, and make our situation slightly different. Let's say he has like this. Let's say this is the situation, and now again small blind is pushing. Let's find the optimal range for him at 22 players remaining. We have changed several values, and we can see that now he can push 98% of hands, and we can call with 28%. As you can see, this bubble is less strict than the MTT bubble which we had before. Now let's say that the bubble bursts. Let's see how it looks. We have 27 players remaining. Let's see the Nash equilibrium with 27 players. We can see that his range is less wide now, and we can call more confidently. Now this tournament features another level of bubble at around 19 players. There is an increase of payouts. So let's see how that looks. Let's say there are 19 players. We calculate Nash equilibrium, and we can see that he can push again wider, 78%, and we can call with 32%. Let's say this mini bubble bursts, and let's see how this changes. can see that he can now push less wide, and we can call wider. Now let's talk about a new feature, which is analysis of MTT situations with their raises. For that, simply assign some actions to the players at the table, say small blind min raises you, and we can calculate Nash ranges. We can see that he should be min raising 75%, and we should be pushing 63% against that, and he should be calling it 39% of hands. And you can also review more complex scenarios. Let's say he raises, this guy pushes, and now we are thinking, should we call with tens or not? Let's see how it looks. And yes, we should be calling with tens for sure. If, of course, these reads are correct. You should always review your reads. Is he opening this wide? Maybe he's opening not so wide, and he's opening actually pretty tight. And this changes a lot for us. We can see that some hands which were profitable before have vanished. Another feature which we added is the support for knockout tournaments with MTT mode. Now let's say we're reviewing some SNG MTT for 90 man, 6 max, and the sum of chips is 135,000. And we have, let's say, bubble, where there are only 14 players remaining. And the average stack is roughly reasonable. And let's say blinds are higher, something like 600, for example. And let's see how bubble works on this knockout tournament. Now we can see he should be pushing wide. We are calling only 17%. And if he is pushing us after bubble bursts, now the strategy changes a lot. He should be less wide, and we are much more comfortable with the call. If we change the positions, of course we can call wider on the bubble, because if we lose, we do not bust immediately. As you can see, because of this, if we call, he is worried that we bust him, and we can call reasonably wide, 22% versus 52% pushing range. And if he chooses to push wide, our calling range is 50% of hands. This is because if we win, we bust him, so that helps with our equity. Another feature is support for FGS. Many players were requesting FGS support for MTT model, and because we have significantly improved performance, now we can finally support FGS model at level 1. Unfortunately, at level 2 or more, it becomes simply too slow, so this is currently the limit. But you can see how FGS calculation would affect this. As you can see, it doesn't affect it that much. And what you should see is that usually in MTTs, FGS 1 doesn't change too much, especially if you are dealing with the full table. Now, another new feature is the support for calculation of the limited raising range, and let me demonstrate you that. Here we have a situation where hero raises and big blind pushes. And if we click calculate, now we see this new interface which shows only these four hands which were part of our initial raising range. The hands which weren't part of the initial raising range simply do not display their EV. And this is different because previously this range always jumped to 100% like this and demonstrated this kind of result. Now, another question regarding MTT mode, which I get asked a lot, is what to do if I don't remember how many players were remaining in a certain tournament spot. Let's say I was playing a tournament and I do not know if there were 45 players, or I don't even know if there were 300 or 45 players. Now, to figure out the correct answer, you need to do the following. First of all, calculate the average stack at your table. Here we can see we have 81k chips, 9 players, so the average stack is 9k. So generally the average stack on all tables is the same. So we can use that as a solution to the question which we are trying to solve here. So if our stack has if our average stack is 9k, then the entire tournament average stack is 9k. So let's say you had a big tournament with a lot of chips, 1,500,000 chips. And we have 9K at our table. Now we can increase the number of players. And we can see that at 100 players, the average stack is still 1,500. It means that this is probably too much for a situation where there are less than 100 players. So let's say if there was 1,000,000 chips, we can now see that at 100 players, the average stack is around 10K. So this could be it. So this is a way you basically choose the situation and you change the number of players until the average stack matches in the MTT matches the average stack at your table. But remember that, as I showed previously, bubble factor plays a hugely important role. So it is important to remember how many players vote there, especially if you are close to the bubble. So if you have a complex hand, like you have doubts during play, I recommend to record, like maybe take a note how many players were remaining, so you can review it in ICMIZER later and have choose the optimal strategy for the hand, and not some suboptimal decision because you forgot that. This is important information. It would be nice if it was included in the hand histories. And maybe you could ask PokerStars to add that. Now this is basically it. I have shown you the enhanced performance, the new support for different MTT situations. Now we can have calculate Nash and calculate in almost all situations at the same time, and this is huge because previously when you were reviewing MTT you had to manually edit a lot of ranges, and imagine how you can do this. Here we simply click one button and every range is set to the optimal. Now we have less work to do and we can spend more time reviewing our hands and actually improving our skills. I hope this was useful, and if you liked the video, please click like and subscribe to our channel. I also recommend to click the bell so you don't miss out any new videos. And if you have any questions or comments, please ask them and I'd be glad to answer. And big thanks for watching.